losing my voice, so it saves me.
No problem. Good evening, all. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Please could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up using the raise hand function? And please could you ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function is available for you to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of your chair, Councillor Charles, this evening, or myself as the Democratic Services Officer. If you're having any difficulty hearing or being heard, then please let either myself or Councillor Charles know. And if you are using video conference, could you please turn your camera off in the first instance to see if that helps with your broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth. Thank you, Chair. That completes the housekeeping.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee meeting, Tuesday, the 4th of October, 2022 at 5 p.m. This is a remote meeting. The agenda, part 1, apologies for absence. I have one, Councillor Christine Cave. Do you have any, Amy?
None to myself, Chair.
Anybody else got any apologies? No, smashing. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of September 2022, pages 1 to 9. Would you like me to go through them page by page, or is everybody happy that they are correct? Move on block. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Gareth. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is to receive declarations of interest, including whipping declarations. Note that members seeking advice on this item are asked to contact the monitoring officer at least 48 hours before the meeting. Do we have any declarations? No, none. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is reference the draft Vale of Glamorgan Council Annual Self-Assessment 21-22. Cabinet report from the 8th of September. This has been sent to us from the Cabinet. It is just for noting unless anybody has any comments they wish to add to it. Happy to note, everybody? Yes, thank you, Gareth. Neil, you happy to note? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is the reports of the Director of Social Services. The revenue monitoring for the period of the 1st of April to the 31st of April 2022. It's from Lance, the Director of Social Services, for the period of said 31st of August 2022. This underlines the current pay offer, which I've read, which is more than the annual budget, which is 8 million overspend, and being offset from resources. Is that right, Lance? Like to take us through?
I think Gemma would normally take us
Gemma,
through.
is it
Sorry,
Gemma?
Hi.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hi, Gemma.
Hi. Yep. So I've just pick up the revenue monitoring for the period to the 31st of August. We are picking up some emerging pressures during the financial year. We do have a pressure relating to energy standing charges, but currently that seems to be offset by kind of reduced energy usage across the service, but we'll continue to keep that under review in year. The recent pay award proposal has been costed into these monitoring figures, and those projections are in the region of 6 to 7% when compared with the budgeted pay figure, which was around 3%. So there is a significant pressure to be met in year there. We do have an underspend within the policy budget because we continue to maintain a significant internal borrowing off the back of our reserve balances, and therefore that reduces the borrowing costs against the budget, and so we're using that underspend to offset those pay figures. We also have a number of inflationary and demand pressures across services that I'll pick up as I run through the report. The council is still claiming some sums from the COVID hardship scheme, but those are quite limited now. There's some last little bits of free school meal and statutory sick pay going through. We're also paying sums for the under the Ukrainian funding scheme, discretionary cost of living schemes, and we're starting to make payments now on the carers grant and winter fuel payments as well. In terms of social services, that picks up in about paragraph 2.16 of the report. It's relatively early in the financial year, but we're currently anticipating that social services could overspend by 1.35 million. However, 600,000 of that relates to the pay award and will be offset by the policy underspend. The balance of that overspend will be picked up by social services reserves. In terms of the children and young people services, we have a number of overspends. Some relating to legal costs, financial support for special guardianship and residence orders, supporting care leavers and those in when I'm ready placements, and the intake and family support teams are also incurring some additional costs. And there are some favourable variances, particularly in the foster payments budget. In terms of adult services, there is continuing pressure on the budget for community care packages, and this budget is extremely volatile, and it's quite difficult to make an accurate assessment of the outcome, but work is being undertaken to assess that and will feed into future monitoring reports. But we're currently projecting an overspend of 400,000, which has been partly offset by a number of vacant posts within the service. And then in terms of the resource management safeguarding service, we're currently projecting an adverse variance of 500,000, but some of that is the payoff of 300,000. But there is also pressure on the budget in terms of running the council's residential care homes. But again, there are vacant posts within other areas of resource management safeguarding, which are partly offsetting this overspend. Leisure, we had the overspend that was reported in the last monitoring of 500,000, which is relating to that reduced number of customers in the leisure facilities and the fallout of the kind of COVID hardship grant that we've seen. Services are continuing to work towards delivering their efficiency savings, and we have a new section in the report which identifies reserves, and that's in paragraph 2.46 downwards in the report, and that sets out the use of reserves against a number of categories for capital, but also planned use of reserves to fund revenue schemes and unplanned use of reserves to support emerging overspends in year. And just to very briefly just mention, the Treasury Management section of the report sets out some borrowing that's taken place in year, but further borrowing will be obviously kept under review as we progress through the year in the context of the kind of higher interest costs that we're seeing at the moment. And then in terms of investments, because we currently are holding sizable reserves that we will obviously review as part of the forward budget strategy, but we are generating relatively good returns in year off the back of that, and that will feed into future monitoring reports as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask Gemma? Neil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Gemma. Given the national circumstances and the chaos that our economy is in at the moment, it's hardly surprising that we're facing pressures that you've been describing. I am concerned though about the staff vacancies, because although it is saving us money in terms of wages, it is adding pressure to the individual members of staff, because the amount of work, and particularly under the present circumstances, isn't going down. In fact, to the contrary, it's expanding hugely. And maybe this is more for Lance and Suzanne than for you, Gemma. But the stress that's putting on our current staffing, I think, is probably going to be increasing rather than decreasing, which is going to end up causing a knock-on effect again in terms of staffing as people go off sick due to stress and so forth. I know whereof I speak from experience. Thank you.
Suzanne or Gemma, do you want to answer that?
Or do you want me to?
Lance.
It's more one for Lance, actually. It's a policy division.
I'm not sure what the question was. Quite
the question is the question, if you like, Lance, is how we are trying to alleviate the extra stress that we're putting on our staff due to the lower numbers and the increased work, and how we're progressing with recruitment.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's not a consistent picture, I suppose, is the first thing to say. That, you know, there are certain areas that are significantly affected, and other areas where actually we've been able to fill and create new posts, which we've also been able to fill. So I suppose that leads to an inconsistent picture in terms of how individual staff are likely to be feeling in terms of covering different bits and pieces of work, and I think the areas that we have struggled to recruit to are areas that, you know, you'll be familiar with. I think traditionally that have been social work posts within children's services, and I think, you know, we've done a lot of work at looking at developing different roles, looking at encouraging staff from overseas, and so while I'm not going to sit here and say that pressure has been entirely alleviated and that we're in a comfortable position, I think we're in a much more comfortable position than we would have been if we hadn't taken those positive actions. In terms of the adult side of the business, I think, and RMS side of the business, is predominantly care staff roles that we are struggling to recruit to, and I think, you know, that can mean that staff in care homes, etc., are expected to cover shifts for colleagues when they're off and so on, and so will undoubtedly be experiencing extra challenges because of that. But I suppose also, given our issues, particularly around domiciliary care, it's our residents that are also experiencing the gap that we have in terms of being able to provide that. So I think it's a mixture, but I suppose our response is to try and make sure that we have a supportive environment, one that focuses on individuals' well-being, one where, you know, we have a supervision process that gives individuals an opportunity to discuss the support requirements that they may have, and endeavours, I suppose, to help mitigate against some of the challenges. But I think I probably have to be honest with you, it is an extremely challenging environment to work in social services at the moment, probably the most challenging I've ever known it.
Yeah, if I can come back. Yeah, thanks for that, Lance. In some ways, that is reassuring, and I certainly wanted to get the full picture out there, which is the reason for my questioning. I sympathise with the dilemma. We have the added pressure of in social care for the elderly, particularly, that we don't have the pool of resources to recruit from due to Brexit mostly, and the reduction in the number of people coming here who are willing to work in those areas where we did have a lot of people working from Europe, and they've all gone back, quite understandably. All I can say is, you know, thank you for the work that you are all doing, and thank the people who are with us at the moment. We have people on this call who've got COVID and are working through that. They can't do that on face-to-face jobs. It is almost a perfect storm with the economy, with Brexit, and with COVID. That's added pressure, and you're doing sterling work. You and the whole team are doing sterling work in weathering us through it. Thank you.
Yes, one of our best private homes I know have just bought out another home in Barry, and they are having to recruit from abroad because the people just are not there to recruit into the industry. Does anybody else have any more questions?
Julie's got a hand up. Julie Wilson's
I can't see Julie. Julie?
Hi, thank you. Just to Obviously, I work in a care home, so I can tell you from the coalface, it's not getting any easier. Most of the staff are the same age as me. You can't recruit anybody younger. So what's going to happen in the future? One of my colleagues is 65 and is still very much in work and not looking to retire. And we used obviously I'm working a private care home. My employer used to go to Romania and get workers. All our nurses are Romanian, but obviously at the moment nobody wants to come. That's the big thing. It's not that they can't recruit abroad, it's just nobody wants to come, and that's the problem we've got at the moment.
Yeah, it's a difficult time. Does anybody else have any more questions? Oh, by the way, 65's not old. I've got to say that.
Susan Lloyd Selby's got a hand up as well.
Right, can't see. Okay. Hi, Susan. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I think probably a question for Gemma. Thank you for taking us through the budget figures, Gemma. We've been hearing in previous meetings about the number of people in the Vale who've had, sorry, I apologise, put my camera on, who've had an assessment of their care needs that we've not been able to meet because of a shortage of staff. So just wondering whether the budget projections, whether the funding for those packages of care that have already been identified as needed is ring-fenced within the budget projections, or whether as those packages are picked up, whether that would then impact those budget projections in adult services.
I think, and hopefully Lance will correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly I believe that we'd have a more significant overspend if we were able to fulfil all of those care packages. So if we had enough, we were able to fill all the hours that we've assigned, that overspend would increase.
That is correct. The last time I looked at the shortfall, it was in excess of £1 million worth of care that we were unable to purchase.
Yeah.
On an annualised basis, sorry.
Yeah. Is that affecting people coming out of hospitals greatly?
Yes, it is. There are people who are waiting for care who are unable to get out of hospital as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Lance. Sue, would you like to ask anything else?
No, thank you. It's a really helpful clarification. So in reality, the budget pressures are significantly more challenging than the figures indicate. I mean, they're challenging enough, and as Neil has already said, understandably so in the current climate. But the reality is they would be worse if the labour market was actually to shift in a more positive direction and we were able to respond to those assessed needs. So helpful for us to bear in mind and understand the context. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you, Gemma, for a very precise report. Does anybody else have any more questions? Lance, did you want to come back in?
I was just hoping to respond a bit to Councillor Selby's comment there, and it's just, I suppose, that predicting and projecting the total impact for a budget this size is inherently really difficult, and there's always a margin of error with that. This time of year is almost the most difficult because we've had enough months worth of spend to date and projected packages to look forward to, that actually we end up at this point often it looking worse than it actually is. And I suppose I just wanted to let you know that, because my expectation would be that it isn't as bad as it looks. What we tell you at Scrutiny Committee is exactly how it looks to us, rather than, I suppose, with the benefit of years and years of experience of having known that this tends to not come out quite as bad as the money should look on the basis of what all the spreadsheets tell us. And so I just want to give you a little bit of good news.
Thank you very much, Lance. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? No, thank you very much. Moving then on to agenda item 6, which is the deprivation of liberty safeguard stalls annual update. I see that there is a
Chair?
30. Yeah.
Sorry, do you mind? Are we moving with notes on that previous report, please?
Yeah. You're all happy to note the report from that
Yeah,
Gemma presented?
I'll take Thomas as Councillor Thomas is moving and Councillor Lynch Wilson is seconding. Is that okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to 6, which is the deprivation of liberty safeguard stalls annual update. I see that there's a 13.4 million overspend here. Is Natasha here to present this? Oh, hi, Natasha. There you are. Yes. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Yeah, just this is an annual update on the deprivation of liberty safeguards in relation to some performance and activity, and to take note of the new arrangements under the amended Mental Capacity Act that will result in dolls becoming liberty protection safeguards. The report just highlights some of the team functions and what deprivation of liberty safeguards are, and that we will be moving towards a new framework. As yet, that framework I've not got a date for implementation. We have consulted on the new code of practice for the liberty protection safeguards, and we have undertaken some workforce training mapping exercises in order to bid for some funding in the future. This is an area of business that was included on the risk register, and I think still remains on the risk register, and that is due to the fact that historically this has been an area where we have never been able to meet demand, so in terms of the applications to us for depriving somebody of their liberty and the risks associated with that. However, because of preparation for the new framework of LPS and funding that has come from Welsh Government, we've been able to have a separate project team to solely concentrate on these applications. And the report outlines that currently for the Vale of Glamorgan we have 77 outstanding applications. And that's just to note because historically that number has been significantly higher. The team operates on behalf of the Vale, the Health Board and Cardiff Council, and the future operating model of the team under the LPS framework is yet to be determined, but we have a strategic implementation team amongst the 3 partners that are looking and considering those things. So in terms of this report, we are asking that this be referred to Audit Committee, and that Scrutiny takes note of the amended legislation and framework to LPS.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Does anybody have any questions before I ask if anybody'd like to refer it? Was that you, Helen? Did you put your hand up? Go ahead. Thank you, Helen.
Hi, Natasha. I just wanted to check something on the numbers for the. Is this a waiting list? The backlog are people waiting to be assessed for dolls. Is that correct? Because there's 2021 is 332. Have I got that wrong?
No, that's right. That's in total across the 3 partners.
Okay.
So that's across Cardiff and the Vale Health Board. So that's why I made the distinction that we have 75 currently. That figure, I probably, what I should have showed you is that figure was significantly more. If I put the three partners together, so 20, if I give you the examples, 17, 18, 19 probably would have looked more like 2,000 plus. So it was just to give you a flavour of what the picture looks like for the whole team rather than just the Vale.
Okay, so my follow on then is probably to Lance then, is proportionately, how is the funding worked out then if our demand is different? Our demand is lesser, proportionately, what happens to our budget?
Do you want me to answer? Because
if you can answer,
I can answer that. So there's a proportionate split that's in place. So based on obviously the varying pots of money, I think it's currently the Vale is 17%, Cardiff 45, and the Health Board the remaining. So that's across staffing and other areas. So yeah, we do fund it based on numbers.
So then the demand for your staff. So I note that you were going to be putting in some funding to support it. Currently, yes. How is it working with, you've not got many staff, you've got one, is it one full time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of the demand, that's a tremendous demand.
That's being picked up through, so the additional funding has enabled us to create a project team. So they are separate BIAs to the established workforce who are concentrating on picking up that backlog. So for future, if we're looking at future, we know that the funding for this area of work has to significantly increase.
Yes, that was where I was going with it.
Yes.
And again, you know, in terms of social care, the demands placed on local authorities are increasing. So thanks very much for that answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Does anybody else have their hands up? Any more questions from anybody? No.
No, I'd like to move the recommendations though, please, Chair.
Yeah, so we all happy to refer it to the audit committee? Yeah, and we all happy to note the report? Yep, thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Neil. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, which is the first and second quarter scrutiny recommendation tracking 21-22 and the proposed annual forward work programme schedule 2022 to 2023. This is a routine report. Amy, will you take us through, please?
Yes, Chair, certainly. First thing to note, committee, is you do have these reports on a quarterly basis, but we have combined the first and second quarters, because as you're aware, we didn't start our scrutiny meetings until June of this year because of the election being held in May, and then obviously with your August resets as well in the second quarter, we only had a few meetings to actually provide your recommendation tracking for you. So we've combined it together this year round just because it's an election year. The committee is still in a really good shape. You'll see from the appendices, Appendix A, Appendix B and Appendix C, which is the recommendation tracking for the committee. You'll see that all of the points are marked as completed, apart from a point on Appendix C, which is the on the 6th of September. Sorry, excuse me. I do apologise, excuse me. You'll see that the report is to be referred to Cabinet for the 29th of September's meeting. So obviously that hasn't quite happened yet. Well, it has happened, but we're still waiting on the minutes for that. So that will be updated as completed very shortly, which means that all of your recommendation tracking is up to date. And then with regards to your forward work programme, continues to be in a good shape. There are 1 or 2 reports that have slipped through the programme, but ever so slightly. So we're talking one meeting to the next rather than any major delays or any removals. So the report is simply asking for your permission to publish.
Janice, you're still muted.
Yeah, oh, poor old Amy, she's not well at all.
No, she isn't.
Yeah, so are you all happy to publish the report?
Absolutely, yep, move that.
Thank you very much. So, well, I don't have any items which are urgent, and we have no part 2 items. So that is it for this meeting. Thank you all very, very much for your attendance. Please be careful, stay safe. Amy, you take paracetamols and drink plenty of water. And you too, Susan. Get well soon. Good night, God bless. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Get well and stay well, everyone.
Thank you,
yeah, thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.